Um, I just want to extend a huge thank you to everyone that's here on the call for the session today, talking about Talus, the former HBC 692, and a little history of experimentals and some of the collab brewers we had. So I'm going to pass it back over to our team over in Europe.
Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to the team in Yakima. Welcome to our Talus introduction and launch to the European market. This is a really exciting variety that's come out of the YCR breeding program, and we've got some great minds and some great brewers on the call to have a chat to you this afternoon. So from YCR, we've got Jason, Joe, and Ryan, and Luke and myself, Dean, from YCH in Europe, Sean from Siren Craft Brew in the UK, and Cosmo from Barslan in Spain. So great to have you all here. Really excited. Have a beer already poured out from Sirens, tasting amazing. Looking forward to chatting with you guys for the next hour or so, and pass it over to the YCR team to introduce Talus and hop breeding and this great new variety that we've got coming into the market.
All right, thanks, Dean. Good morning, everyone. So I thought what we would do is just start out with kind of a discussion or me talking basically on the background kind of hop breeding and kind of our objectives and what leads to something like Talus. And Ryan has a few slides he can share on some of the details behind what makes Talus unique in terms of its evolutionary background. So, hop breeding, of course, with the hop market itself is separated into two main markets: the aroma market and the alpha market. And of course, they're very distinct, and they kind of point out two main objectives when we're breeding. And that is breeding for efficiency and breeding for flavor, aroma, or some other function within hops. Hops are interesting because they do provide unique flavors and aromas and functionality in beer that you really have a hard time finding with any other plant. So what we try to do with hop breeding is find ways to exploit that uniqueness. The challenge, of course, is how do you find uniqueness if you're working within a kind of a limited subset of genetics, and that being our existing commercial varieties that are out there. There's discussion about how there is, I can't remember what number we're using now, maybe 100 to 150 different commercial varieties available across the globe, which sounds like a lot, but if you really start boiling down their pedigrees and their family trees, it's pretty limited. I kind of have joked in the past that the hop family tree grows more like a poplar than an oak. It's kind of straight up, and the roots run fairly just straight down as well. So what we want to do is find different parental combinations, make crosses between the males and females. Another interesting note about hops is they are dioecious, meaning they're separate male and female plants. All commercial varieties are female. So I have to find suitable males, match them up with suitable females, and make those crosses. And then we run through this 10-year vetting process trying to select for what we're looking for during that process. And as I mentioned, one of the challenges is if you're working with just the available commercial varieties, you're kind of limited on your genetic background. And so what we end up with, and you can see it in hops, they've kind of evolved over time to conserve certain compounds within the plant. And that's where you get really kind of a lack of diversity. And so it makes it difficult to make crosses and find something truly new and unique. You can build up efficiencies, you can add yield, you can add disease resistance, things like that. But the challenge can be finding something truly unique. And that's where, several years ago, we started looking towards wild hops. Particularly a taxonomic variety that Ryan will get into a bit more, called Neomex canis. The idea being, if we cross within these plants that have never been introduced in the domesticated hop genetics, or their genetics never being introduced into it, will something different come about? The other advantage to looking to those wild plants is potentially finding novel disease resistance. And that was also a goal of looking towards the wild Neomexicanus plants, was to identify these novel, stable sources of disease resistance, particularly to powdery mildew. So years ago, we started making those crosses and crossed onto one particular female. It was a female that was given to me by Chuck Zimmerman. And we knew nothing about it other than it grew like a beast and would take over the trellis and all its neighboring plants and not flower until the end of August. And so, or mid-August. And so we one year decided to cross on that using leftover pollen we had from crosses earlier in the season. And from that cross, we noticed some interesting things. Particularly two selections were made out of that. 472, which if you're familiar with that hop, is one that gives a really woody character to beer, really very exceptionally high carryoffline levels, higher than we'd ever seen before. And then its sister 438, which eventually became Sabro. You know, very distinct orange creamsicle, herbal kind of aroma that we'd never seen before. And it was a real eye-opener to us that there is opportunity still to exploit. After looking years and years and years at hops and seeing very similar aromatic profiles, it was a very exciting thing to see these selections come out that were very different, unique, and distinct. So we've kind of continued down that line with the development of Talus, with Talus being a daughter of 438, which that cross was made in 2006, I believe, trying to expand on that and look for new and unique flavor compounds. The interesting thing about it, from my standpoint, is looking back, the cross was really kind of made in the wrong place and time, the original Neomexicanus cross, because most of what we were smelling wasn't desirable at the time, wasn't sought after. And so I would love to go back and look at all the progeny, I think we had something like 3,000 or 4,000 progeny in that one cross alone. I'd love to go back and take another look at those, knowing that we know now what we now know today. But anyways, I'm going to kick it back to Ryan, let him talk a bit about what that means, what it means to utilize wild, or where these wild hops are coming from. When I say Neomexicanus, what does that mean? And he can explain a little bit more of that in detail. Ryan is the technical director at YCR. And is managing all of our molecular genetics and higher end selection technologies.
Thanks, Jason. Let me see if I can get this presentation to work real quick. Okay, can everybody see that? All right, perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, so as Jason was mentioning, you know, a lot of the older hop germplasm is pretty limited in its scope. The Humulus genus, or the scientific name for the hop group, it consists of 5 different subspecies. The vast majority of what's been used in cultivated hops has been from lupulus, the subspecies lupulus native to Europe. I've got a couple of slides here in just a second to show kind of that geographic distribution. But there's also 4 other subspecies that have been not quite as utilized. There's been some hybrids here and there, particularly for lupuloides. There was a cross from back in the early 1900s, produced brewer's gold, I believe bitter gold, and that used a wild North American hop as a part of that lineage. And because of that, and since it's been used in a lot of the subsequent crosses, the USDA program, and many of the private hop breeding programs, all of those that have brewer's gold in its pedigree, a lot of these modern hop varieties that were created in North America do derive from that cross. And that's been actually attributed to having some of the more like American hop flavor, some of the more Cascade or Centennial, and especially some of the sulfur thiol compounds that have been recently in discussion about having a big impact on beer, especially 4-MMP. which I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce that the long name, the long version of that name, but that's thought to derive from that original cross. So the benefit of being able to use wild germplasm is there's the chance that you'll find agronomic or chemistry traits that you've never been seen before. Just as Jason was saying, that in that New Mexicanus cross that we were using, there are all these different flavor combinations that have never been seen before in cultivated hops. And that's really the promise of being able to use wild germplasm, in addition to some of the disease traits that he also mentioned. With the wild germplasm, since it's had time to evolve in different locations throughout the world that may have been exposed to some of the diseases and pests that are now really plaguing or have become endemic in hop growing, they do offer some promise to impart some of those traits on cultivated hops. So the other subspecies that are in this list, Cortifolius is native to Japan, and then Leucoides, New Mexicanus, and pubescens are all native to North America. Get this slide real quick. There we go. And this is roughly the geographic distribution of those different hop varieties or subspecies. And as you'll see in North America, there's quite a bit of overlap between those. One thing that has been noted is that pubescens doesn't seem to hybridize very well with Leucoides, and it retains a distinct molecular structure. It does not seem to hybridize at all. So there may be some incompatibility with that particular subspecies. But in the case of New Mexicanus and Leucoides, they share a very similar genome structure and are fertile with lupulus. So, a lot of the newer hop varieties that are coming out, including Talus, have been using this New Mexicanus germplasm as a source of novel traits. This is just another view of that, the figure there on the right is actually showing the genetic variation in those three different groups. So as long as you're taking from purely wild germplasm and it hasn't had a chance to cross with, say, some homestead, hops planted on homesteads or nearer to growing regions, they're more geographically isolated and are truly wild. These do seem to form separate clades when you look at the genetic structure using molecular markers such as microsatellites or SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. So there's, with that amount of genetic variation, it's not shared with lupulus. There's a lot of promise in these different subspecies to, be able to create new flavor buckets, to create novel aromas and novel growing traits that we think could, both really help out our growers as well as be very unique and distinctive in beer. So those are all the slides I've got. Just quickly thrown together there. So I guess I'll turn it back over and, Joe, if you've got anything to say or if you want to move over to that video real quick.
Yeah, Nicole, if we could play the video, that would be awesome.
The excitement around HBC 692 has really led us to make the next decision to bring that in and make it a named brand. HBC 692 will be known as Talus moving forward. So for us, Talus represents those rocky slopes at the bottom of a lot of the mountains we have here in the Northwest. So the exciting thing about Talus is just how it performs in the brew house. When you're evaluating that raw hop in the field, that's exactly the profile that you're getting in that finished beer. And so there's not a lot of guesswork. Brewers know what to expect and they know what that beer is going to taste like at the end. So Talus's aroma profile is pretty intense, consisting of pink grapefruit, citrus rinds, and dried roses, along with pine resin, tropical fruit, and sage. With that Neo Mexicanus flavor profile that Sabro and a lot of her sisters offers, we wanted to go back and breed back on that. And 692 was one of the many daughters that came out of that cross. All of the breweries that are using it are really excited and looking forward to contracting for it. We think it has a very bright future in our portfolio.
Awesome, Joe. How's Talus looking this year? It must be getting pretty close to maturity. What's it looking like on the field?
Yeah, it's looking great. We've I don't know if you guys have heard, we've been battling some kind of extreme weather events, wind events over the last few days that have wreaked some havoc in a lot of yards, unfortunately. And I haven't really noticed specifically a whole lot of damage in Talus, but yeah, it's tracking along nicely and starting to really develop aromatically. We still got a few days before we get in and start harvesting that, but yeah, things are looking good for having plenty to get around to all of our sales force and in the brew house all over the place.
Awesome. Luke, do you want to introduce the collaboration project? I think it's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dean, and thanks for the YCR guys for the background information on Talus. It's a hop that we're hugely impressed with, to be honest, over here. And through a lot of the trial brews that we've done with various brewing partners in Europe under HBC 692, there's been a real buzz around this hop for a little while now. And finding out that HBC 692 was going to get the commercial release this year, we knew we had to kind of welcome Talus to the family with a bit of a party, to be honest. So with that in mind, we spoke to some of our absolute favorite breweries around Europe, and we've got a couple of guys on the call. We were looking at everything. We've got, right, so this is the 7th variety to come out of HBC. We came up with 7 incredible brewing partners across 7 countries, right the way across Europe. So we worked with AF Brew in Russia, Basqueland in Spain, our friends at Crack in Italy, Piggy Brewing Company in France, obviously Siren in the UK, Tool in Denmark, and Ultra in the Netherlands. Most of these beers are out in the wild now, kind of as of this week. We've got 1 or 2 coming out end of this week, beginning of next week as well. And from what we've tried so far, these are all absolutely incredible. I mean, we've got Sean on the call, and Dean and I are both enjoying the near normal, is Californian IPA as we speak. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, to be honest. So I think that's a really good place to start off with. So Sean, do you want to talk us a little bit through near normal?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Yeah, cool. So yeah, it's been a fun project to be involved in, and the beer we decided to do it in is what we've been calling a series of beers California IPA, originally a collaboration with Green Cheek Brewery, and it's kind of trying to be like a West Coast IPA, but a nice clean fermentation base, and then let the hops express themselves from that. So we thought it'd be a great thing to try with Talus. So yeah, we brewed it with about, in the dry hop we did about 12.5 grams per liter of Talus over 2 dry hops. And yeah, we feel exactly what you guys have been saying, that what you smell in the hops before you put it in is what you're getting in the beer. It has a huge depth of flavor, I think. So you can I feel I can definitely link it back to Sabro kind of characters, which almost are like top notes that come through, some floral notes, and then there's huge citrus and tangerine, pink grapefruit is very big underneath that, and then we also got some tropical notes coming through. Yeah, we're really happy with the beer. We've been tasting it almost every day through fermentation or through the dry hopping, and yeah, it's really expressed itself now nicely. So yeah, great hop.
Cool, thanks very much. And then, so Cosmo, you guys went a little bit more New England route with Mucho Talus. How did you guys find the brew? How's the beer? Because we've not actually managed to try that one yet.
Well, I'm drinking it right now and enjoying it.
Yeah, so we went down a very different route to Sean and the Siren guys, in that we went for a kind of hazy, New England style. Won't be able to see through this. And that was mainly because we've mostly been doing those this year. They're very popular at the moment, as I'm sure you will know. And because of that, we got quite a kind of good core base malt and fermentation recipe. So we'd like to do, if we have a new variety to play with, this is kind of the best style of beer to do it with from our perspective, because we know what every other kind of flavor aspect and texture and things in the beer are from already. So now we know anything additional or different, it's probably from this new hop varieties. It kind of helps us get to know the variety a lot more efficiently. But yeah, in the brew house, it was exactly like Sean was saying. I think someone else mentioned earlier, having a hop that tastes like it smells is pretty fantastic and unusual. I remember I have been to Yakima a couple of times, and you go around selecting hops and you think, oh, these are really great. But then ultimately in the back of your mind, well, what's it actually going to be like when it's in my beer, when it's actually gone through fermentation and things? But here it's actually, it's very similar. But yeah, we'd actually also had a small sneak peek or whatever. We used some HB 692 earlier this year and some other beers. We had a bit of an idea of what it might do, but it was still, it's very much blowing us away in how different it is. Like, it's got some Sabro characteristics, like we said, part of the same family, but it is also quite refreshing in that so many other kind of hops coming to the market or being pushed by brewers are very much of that kind of pure tropical fruit kind of flavor profile. Having something that comes with these wood characteristics and slight creaminess really gives us something different to work with. So I'm pretty excited to use it again in the future and be able to bring some more complexity to other beers. But yeah, as for the actual collaboration, which hopefully you guys will be able to get soon. I know we sent some to the UK and a couple other places in Europe, so hopefully it'll be in a shop near you or a bar near you any day now. It's a bit more intense than what Sean did, being a DDH New England style. So we did pretty much double the hop load he did, 20 grams per liter. So it's a lot more intense, probably aromatically and in the palate as well. Very much a big kind of Talus punch. But hopefully people, will enjoy it. So far the feedback's been good, and it'll be a good example of how this hop can work in a hazier style of beer.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the feedback that we've been getting, certainly through the early tastes across kind of our various brewing partners as well, the people seem to be getting a real buzz around Talus. And I mean, it's certainly something that I've been really, really excited about kind of working through this year. There is this certain uniqueness to it, with kind of the balance of citrus and pine with the floral and the tropical fruit as well. I think it's something really unique, and it's something that we're really proud to have been able to bring to market in this way. So there's a couple of questions that have come in advance of this, kind of to the group as a whole, and I'm going to pose a few of those. So one of them we've touched on a little bit, which is that kind of the level of the flavor, the kind of the aroma that you're getting from the hop kind of really coming through into the beer. So I think we've heard a little bit from the brewer side. So Joe, and that's something that you mentioned in the video as well. It's a big kind of characteristic of Talus. Can you talk a little bit more kind of about that side of things?
Luke, I could miss that kind of first part of that. So in the video I referenced.
So just kind of as the brewing partners were saying, there's kind of this real correlation between the aroma of the hops and the taste as kind of the survivable taste right the way through the beer. So that's seemingly something that's fairly unique to Talus. Is that something that you've seen specifically to do with the parentage, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good question for Jason too, because I know that Sabro is a lot similar in that respect as well. 472 is very similar. A lot of what you're getting in the field is translating right into the beer. And like Cosmo had referenced earlier, you go out and sometimes you'll smell something in the field that is blow your socks off fruity, but it just, for whatever reason, doesn't perform in the brew house. Similarly, Citra is so widely used now and performs so well in beer, but in the field, it's not necessarily a standout. I mean, it smells nice, but it's not so unique and so head and shoulders above every other hop you're smelling in the field. But in the brew house, it performs so well. And so I think it probably has a lot to do with what we're learning about the survivables that are making it through, all the thiols and all the new research on that aspect. And also to that note too, we talked about it a little bit last night. We were discussing Talus on the Asian virtual harvest session last night, about almost like a perceived sweetness in that hop as well. I know Ashley, our research brewer here, she gets almost a residual sweetness from, or perceived sweetness rather, from 692 as well. I'd be curious if Ryan or Jason could comment on that too, and maybe where that may be coming from.
It's the whole question is pretty complex, in terms of what's driving flavor stability in a hop. 9 times out of 10 over the years, as I've been involved in developing these varieties, I would say 9 times out of 10 that you don't get that translation. You could have a really nice smelling hop, but once you put it in the beer, it performs much differently. Not necessarily bad, it's just different than you expect. You don't get the expectations, or you don't get that impact that you were hoping for. These hops that, along the Sabro line and Talus and other similar ones are unique because they do translate so well. So what's driving that? Well, it's hard to say. It could be, as you mentioned, Joe, the survivability of certain compounds. So which compounds are stable through the brewing process? And then it also has to do with how the hops are used in terms of their interaction with yeast, for example. As an example, Talus is very high in geraniol, one of the highest varieties I've seen. That's a very impactful compound from a flavor standpoint. And it also can be readily biotransformed. So that could add some stability as well, and some further enhancement of flavor. And then on top of that, you have the other minor compounds. A lot of these compounds we're starting to discover today, like the thiols, are measured literally in parts per trillion or even higher, or at the minimum parts per billion. And so we're really just scratching the surface on what's driving that flavor and aroma and stability, and what makes those things stable within those hops. And so, the short answer is we don't know all the answers, but we're learning, and we certainly have, Talus provides us a good place to start with in terms of studying that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it has this kind of the uniqueness that the Neo Mexicanus parentage brings to it as well. But yeah, there's a certain otherness to Talus, which is something that I'm really enjoying as well. The kind of this big kind of punchy citrus element to it as well. It's become quite evident, obviously, with some of the trial beers that we've brewed, and certainly with the launch collaborations that we've brewed, that Talus is an incredibly impactful hop in a big hoppy beer. So kind of be it a West Coast, be it a New England style, double IPAs, these kind of things. But I think this is a question more to our brewers on the call as well. What kind of other beers you think Talus could work really well with? Because I mean, for me, there is just the kind of the floral complexity underneath all of the kind of the big punchy tropical notes that's a difficult thing to find elsewhere. So I'll start that off with Cosmo. Do you think the scope for other styles with Talus is?
Yeah, no, I think there's always scope for more. Other beer styles. And one thing that I did think when I first began playing around with this hop was that kind of wood character. We were talking about a lot of the brewery, and wood flavor is something that goes really well with barrel aged stouts and things. That's where the flavor comes from, is the wood. And the idea that you could do a fresh dark beer which has some characteristics of a barrel aged beer through either kettle or dry hopping with this or some of the other relatives like Sabra, like we were saying, which is some similar flavor profiles. So I think you can definitely play around with darker beers and that. And then also, I love a dry hop lager. I think they're great. And I think the floral kind of side of this would play well into that. You get something quite light and refreshing, a kind of, easy drinking, summery beer that you could have a light dry hop or heavy whirlpool hop of this, and you could bring some really nice aromatics through. So there's definitely more to it than just an IPA hop for sure. If anything, the complexity it has means it might prove to be more popular across a range of styles than some of the big IPA hops at the moment.
Awesome. And Sean, are you thinking along similar lines there?
Yeah, we actually have a beer fermenting at the moment, which we trying out with Talus as well, and Sabro. So we bring a Cascadian dark ale with both the hops, and then we're going to add toasted coconut to it. We feel the coconut and the floral kind of thing from the hops, especially from Sabro, but Talus fitted into that really well as well. So we've got that in tank. We're adding the coconut over the weekend, but it's tasting great from just the dry hop. So excited about that. And I'm actually sitting in our barrel store at the moment. It's the only room I can get quiet. We've been talking quite a bit about doing some Brett fermented beers and putting hops in those. And I think you mentioned that earlier to me. So I think that's something we want to play around with. The floral note could work really well there. Yeah, so those are just two ideas we've kind of been talking about. But yeah, we're excited to play around with this hop. I think it's just such a punchy hop. And like I said, there are quite a few layers to the aroma. I had it in glass, in a glass the other day. I think it was the day we were packaging it, and the floral note was kind of sitting on there, and I swirled the glass around and that just jumped out, and then it was just huge tropical fruits, like all of a sudden just. So I think you're going to find different flavors in the beer as you drink it with this hop, which is quite exciting.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I'm convinced that the kind of the floral top notes from Talus are just going to work incredibly well with really bright kind of violety Brett. That's a recipe that I'll play around with homebrewing at some point soon. So just kind of a little bit further on the kind of the launch project that we've been doing. We've got kind of a couple of the guys on the call as we speak, but we've got just a very, very quick, simple. These are the beers that you'll see. The labels. I'll see if I can try to duck out the way and not look like an idiot too much. But we've got these beers are coming out kind of right the way across Europe at the moment. And yeah, from the ones that we've already tasted so far, there's a huge depth of character and a really wide kind of variety of flavors coming out on them. And yeah, just kind of super impressive. It's a real testament to the breeding program. So for the YCR guys, then let me just switch back to a slightly more normal background for a second. So obviously Talus has gone through 10 plus years of our breeding program and our elite trial status and things like this. We've got some other really exciting things kind of in that program as well. So a question again to the YCR guys, and I'll field this one to Jason, and that's with the elite trial hops that we've got at the moment and some of the other things potentially coming into that status in the next couple of years, is there anything that you're particularly excited about?
Good question. Yeah, we've got several, very interesting developments coming up through the program, really focusing on, in the moment anyways, different aspects of this fruity character we're getting, from hops and trying to, I have a personal feeling that if I can, keep one piece of fruit out of beer, I'm doing my job. And so, we're looking at different aspects of providing those flavors that you can't traditionally get from hops. And so 586 is one, I think, that provides a really nice tropical fruitiness to the beer. 630 is another one, HBC 630, that it's a little more nuanced, but it provides a really nice cherry, raspberry, plus tropical top note kind of flavor to beers. And then another one along those lines is 638, which is much more of a key lime kind of light citrus flavor that translates well into beer. Again, these are all, with the exception of 586, maybe a little bit more nuanced than, say, like Talus, but certainly providing some level of value to the brewer. And so it's really, that's kind of where the focus in terms of existing elite lines is, but really the excitement for me is what's coming up through the program in the earlier stages, even as we kind of understand more what's driving flavor and aroma, working with the YCH technical team on looking at those compounds at those minute levels and really driving value in that way through the earlier selection. So I would say the next 3 to 7 years is going to be very exciting in terms of what's coming through the program and what we have to offer up. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a few you've mentioned in there that we've seen to a small extent over in Europe as well, and there's certainly some really exciting stuff coming through. I mean, these obviously kind of Talus has spent a year or so kind of in this elite stage where we're able to trial this with obviously with some of our brewing partners and things. How far off would you say we are from the next Talus? Is that, hey, potentially another 2-3 years down the line to really kind of find something that's that unique?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer. We tend to take a fairly conservative approach to releases. When you consider that in any given year, we're working with literally tens of thousands of genotypes and trying to whittle that down to just a few. And so within any given year, we may have anywhere from 6 to a dozen what we consider elite lines. And so we could be releasing something new every year, but the goal for us is to be saving that actual release and branding for something that does have true what we consider true value contribution, whether it be for efficiency on the farm side or some level of brewing quality or efficiency on the user side. So I would say, our strategy has typically been every couple of years, you see a release come out of HBC. If you look at us historically, Citra 2008, Mosaic 2012, Equinox 2014, Laurel 2016, and then 18 was Sabro and Pato, and then this year with Talus. So I would say that certainly within the next 2 to 3 years, yes, you could be seeing at the next release. Which one will that be? It's tough to say, but I certainly think it will be something that's worthwhile.
Cool, fantastic. So I think at this point, because I've hit my questions and the questions that we've had through from the chat as well, I'm going to open it up to see if certainly from our brewing partners, if you've got anything that you want to ask of the YCR guys and vice versa.
Yeah, I had a question. I'll just Talus is from the Neo-Mexicanus cross. And that's something quite unusual. You were saying that, and Sabro, like the first kind of time you've done that. Are you looking at playing around with any of those other kind of wild varieties that you mentioned? There are, I think, 3 in the US in total, including Neo-Mexicanus. Are you doing any crossbreeding with any of the other ones, or are you just focusing on Neo-Mexicanus for now?
Yeah, so Neo-Mexicanus kind of has been the focus. We've got actually, I think, well, there's several different families we're working with right now from different Neo-Mexicanus lines that we're trying to see what kind of particular flavor contributions they might have. But then I also know that, and maybe I can let Ryan chime in on this, but we are looking towards other wild sources right now, and will be over the next few years, looking for ways to exploit potentially other sources of wild genetics. So I know Ryan's been kind of starting a project up this year with that. So I'll let him details.
Yeah, we are exploring new methods of introducing new diversity to our germplasm, whether that's through the more advanced kind of molecular tissue culture type things, doing fusions, hybridizations in tissue culture, or by introducing some of these other wild accessions. So we do have plans to do some of that in the future. We're already evaluating some of these new Mexicanas. One thing that's particularly intriguing to me is the pubescens and cortifolius, which haven't been as extensively experimented with in breeding programs. Part of that's probably because it does seem to be observed that pubescens does not seem to be as fertile as the other subspecies are, but there are methods that we can try out to overcome that infertility and incompatibility. So yeah, long story short, yeah, we are exploring all these different subspecies and evaluating what contributions they might have.
Cool. Thank you.
I had one question just about your harvest window for hops like this as you are starting to breed more, and you say the smell and the aroma in the field translates really well. Is that window for harvesting quite tight on these sort of hops, or is that not going to be a problem as kind of more of these sort of hops get developed?
Certainly a consideration in selection. It's kind of interesting how important that has become in selection. Looking out, when those pups are going to be harvested, are they going to be competing for resources during, our Citra and Mosaic window? These are all things we have to consider because yes, to your point, something like Talus has a very specific aromatic profile and contribution within the beer. And if we harvest it too early or too late, that will be impacted. So, when you're looking at, we're still learning with Talus, but I would anticipate it's going to have about a week-long window for harvest, kind of in that third week of September window. If we have new varieties coming along and they start competing, either within that window or within the other windows, then we have to, make that call whether it's worth, cannibalizing that specific window. So it's kind of an odd consideration. It's not something we used to have to worry about, but certainly is now.
Cool.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Luke, I got a question for the brewers.
Go for it.
I'm curious how you would describe the perceived bittering profile of 692 or Talus in the brews and using it in the brew process.
Well, from my perspective, I found it quite low, but we didn't actually use, we use a tiny amount in the kettle, but it's really just a very big dry hop, which obviously, well, you get different kinds of bitterness from kettle hopping and dry hopping. And I find in dry hopping, different hops, even if the alphas are higher or lower, sometimes there are different kinds of bitterness compared to other varieties. And the Talus is, for me, it's quite an easy drinking kind of profile on our beer anyway. It's like you do get some kind of resiny bitterness, but I think that's probably from a small amount in the kettle, and the actual aroma hit, the aroma hopping and dry hopped portion, I feel it's pretty low. This is very, very easy to drink. But yeah, maybe Ryan found something different.
Yeah, well, we actually, with these California IPAs we're doing, our calculated IBUs are 90 to 120 IBUs. They don't translate that much, but we actually use Simcoe for bittering in these just from the first brew we did when we collaborated. We found it gives a really clean bitterness. With this beer, I feel there's a resiny bitterness more than anything else. And we've got so much in there from the kettle hops that I don't actually think I can tell the difference where the Talus is, but if anything, it would be resiny, but it is clean and soft and drinkable, like Cosmo said. I would like to try, I think in the Cascadian dark ale we're doing, I'll kind of try to pick out something from there. But yeah, would like to see how this works in a New England kind of hazy IPA, softer bitterness. But yeah, I think it works well in this beer.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I think if there's nothing else, I'll do a quick thanks to everyone, and I'll hand things back over to Dean.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this webinar. It's a really exciting project that we had in Europe with the 7 brewers, and a great new variety from Yakima Chief Ranches. So we really appreciate everybody's efforts, and be in touch with your local YCH sales rep or approved distributor. And we do still have some stocks in Europe from crop 19 to keep the momentum going. So we've been very strategic with that, and be in touch about 2020 as well. So thank you for your time, and YCR team will let you get to your busy day or long day that you're going to have ahead of you, and appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.